12 royal guards lay sprawled in the mud, their armor dented, their pride shattered, and their fear thick in the air. The Vampire King's black stallion reared like a creature forged from shadow and storm, its hooves striking sparks against the stone courtyard. Chains snapped. Men shouted. The beast screamed, a sound so violent it rattled the manor windows. And in the middle of the chaos stood a pregnant maid no one ever noticed. Elena Marrow wasn't supposed to be there. She had been ordered to scrub the east corridor floors, far from the royal stables. But Mrs. Harrow, the head housekeeper, had shoved her outside with a basket of laundry and a warning, "Move quickly. And keep your head down." Keeping her head down was something Elena had mastered. At 23, with a growing belly hidden beneath a shapeless gray uniform, she had learned to survive by being invisible. The other maids whispered about her. The guards stared with suspicion. No one asked who the father was. No one cared. Until the stallion broke free. The beast, named Obsidian, was a war mount gifted to King Lucien Vale, a creature bred in the volcanic north, rumored to drink blood before battle. 12 trained guards had tried to saddle him. 12 had failed. When the final chain snapped, Obsidian didn't run for freedom. He charged toward the servants. Screams erupted. Women scattered. Elena slipped on the rain-slick cobblestones and fell hard to her knees, instinctively wrapping her arms around her stomach. "Run," a guard shouted. But she couldn't. The thunder of hooves stopped inches from her. Elena looked up. The stallion towered over her, black mane whipping like smoke, crimson eyes blazing with fury. Steam rose from his flanks. His breath was hot against her face. Above, on the balcony carved from black marble, stood King Lucien. Tall. Watching. Elena didn't see a monster. She saw fear. Slowly, ignoring every scream around her, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the last apple slice she had saved for lunch. Food was scarce for servants. She was always hungry now. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady enough. "You're not angry. You're scared." The courtyard fell silent. Obsidian lowered his head. 12 guards froze. Elena held her palm flat. The stallion sniffed the apple, then her hand. Then, shockingly, his massive head dipped further until his nose brushed her stomach. A murmur rippled through the courtyard. Obsidian took the apple gently. And then he bowed. He bent one powerful knee into the mud before her. On the balcony, King Lucien's expression changed for the first time in weeks. "Bring her to my study," he commanded coldly. 2 guards helped Elena to her feet. She didn't resist. She only glanced back as Obsidian watched her leave, ears forward, restless but obedient. Inside the manor, warmth did nothing to calm her racing heart. The corridors felt like the inside of a predator's throat. King Lucien stood by the fireplace when she entered. Tall, pale, dressed in dark silk. His presence filled the room like a storm cloud. "What is your name?" he asked without turning. "Elena, your majesty." "Do you train war horses in your spare time, Elena?" "No, sir." He turned slowly. His eyes were deep red, not cruel but sharp. Assessing. "Then explain how 12 armed men failed, and you succeeded with a dried apple." "I grew up on a farm," she said softly. "Animals listen when you don't threaten them." Lucien stepped closer. His gaze lowered to her concealed stomach. "And what else are you hiding?" Her breath caught. "Nothing, your majesty." Silence stretched between them. He inhaled deeply. Vampires could smell truth. Fear. Bloodlines. His eyes darkened. "That stallion kneels only to royal blood." Elena's heart slammed in her chest. "Who is the father?" he asked quietly. "A traveler," she whispered. "He's gone." Lucien's jaw tightened. 5 months ago, he had nearly died from silver poisoning during a border attack. Feverish. Delirious. He remembered fragments, cool hands, a gentle voice singing, a night blurred by instinct and survival. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "The infirmary," he murmured. "The night of the blood moon." Tears filled Elena's eyes. "You were dying," she whispered. "You didn't know what you were doing." Lucien's world tilted. Obsidian had not bowed to her. He had bowed to his heir. And suddenly the invisible maid was no longer invisible. She was carrying the future of the vampire kingdom. And every enemy in the realm would kill for that. The storm outside intensified, as if the heavens understood what had just changed. Because from that moment on, Elena Marrow was no longer just a maid. She was a secret the kingdom would bleed for. And the vampire king had just realized he could no longer afford to ignore her. Elena Marrow sat on the edge of the ornate chaise in King Lucien Vale's private study, her hands trembling over the soft folds of her dress. The fire flickered, throwing long shadows across the walls lined with ancient tomes, each whispering secrets of a time long before humans walked the earth. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she couldn't move. Not while the child inside her fluttered like a fragile heartbeat, tethering her to this room and to the most dangerous man in existence. Lucien didn't sit. He didn't pace. He simply watched. Tall, commanding, eyes like molten garnet that could dissect lies from truth, fear from courage and weakness from strength. Every breath he drew seemed to pull the room tighter, as if air itself was his to command. "You know why you're here," he said, his voice low and smooth like velvet over steel. "And yet you speak as if nothing happened." I was only trying to," Elena's voice faltered. She clenched her fists, knuckles whitening. "I didn't mean to, please, I only wanted to keep the horse from hurting anyone." Lucien's lips curved into a slow, unsettling smile. "You disobey orders, defy 12 of my guards, and yet you expect, what? Mercy?" His gaze locked onto her belly, the faint swell of life she had been trying desperately to hide. "You carry my blood, Elena. And you don't even know it." Elena froze. The room spun. "Why, Your Majesty?" she whispered, words failing. Her mind scrambled to make sense of his statement. Her memory fluttered back to the night she had helped him in the infirmary. Feverish. Half delirious. Half conscious. He had been pleading for relief, for warmth, for life itself. She had been there. And now, could it truly be? Lucien stepped closer, moving like a shadow with predatory grace. "I should be furious," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "I should demand answers, punish, banish." His hand hovered just inches from her arm, not touching, but charged with a power that could crush bone with ease. "Yet, you saved my heir. Not with strength. Not with weapons. With kindness. And bravery. And something else." "What, something else?" Elena asked, her throat tight. "Your aura," Lucien said, voice softer but still deadly. "I sensed it the moment Obsidian bent his knee. There is magic in you. A power I haven't felt in centuries." He paused, eyes narrowing. "A gift, or a curse? I will need to see it." Elena swallowed hard. The words were both terrifying and strangely comforting. She had always known she wasn't like the other girls. There had been moments, tiny, inexplicable flashes of intuition, healing, or communication with the animals around her. Nothing she could explain, nothing she had dared to admit. Until now. The study door creaked open and Roderick, Lucien's captain of guards, appeared, bowing stiffly. "Your Majesty, dinner awaits. The storm is easing but the courtyard remains dangerous. Obsidian will not return to the stables until morning." Lucien waved a hand. "Leave us." Roderick hesitated, then bowed again and departed, leaving Elena alone with the man whose presence made her heart hammer and her thoughts scatter. "Sit," Lucien commanded. "You will tell me everything. Not lies. Not half-truths. The entire story of your life, your powers, and how you came to be here." Or, his gaze pierced her. "I will find out anyway." Elena lowered herself onto the chaise, trembling, and began to speak. She told him about her childhood, about the orphanage where she learned to survive by helping others while enduring cruelty. About the years of cleaning, scrubbing, hiding her belly, and hoping she could survive one more day. She spoke of the nights when she had whispered to animals, healed minor wounds with her touch, and sung lullabies that seemed to calm even the wildest creatures. Lucien listened silently, absorbing every word. There was no laughter. No mockery. No impatience. Only observation. Every so often, he would tilt his head as if weighing her words against some invisible scale. Finally, Elena's voice broke. "I never asked for any of this," she whispered. "I just wanted to survive. To protect my child." Lucien's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained hard. "And yet, that is exactly why you survived. And why your child will survive. You possess something more than courage, Elena. You possess purpose. And purpose is more powerful than any blade, any spell, or any army I command." A quiet moment fell between them. The only sound was the fire crackling, the storm outside retreating, and the child's heartbeat, a steady, insistent reminder of the fragile life connecting them. Then Lucien stepped closer again, his shadow stretching over her like night itself. "I will protect you," he said, voice cold, but with a promise that shook Elena to her core. "Not because you are weak. Not because you are helpless. But because you have shown me a side of life I had forgotten. A side of hope, compassion. And because what you carry is mine to guard." Elena's breath caught. The room spun with the weight of his words. She had always believed the vampire king to be untouchable, cruel, and distant. And yet here he was, pledging himself, not to her body, not to her obedience, but to her child, to her very existence. Outside, Obsidian pawed the ground in the courtyard, restless but calm, as if sensing the new order in the manor. Elena felt it too, a quiet shift in the air, a promise that the impossible had already begun. Lucien's eyes softened ever so slightly, the storm within them dimming just enough for her to glimpse the man behind the legend. "Prepare yourself, Elena," he said, turning to the window. "The court will soon learn of your presence. And some will not welcome it. But you have already survived the impossible. You will survive this too." Elena clenched her fists over her belly, drawing courage from the life growing within her. She had faced storms before, storms of poverty, cruelty, and fear. But this was something different. This was a storm she had chosen to step into, hand trembling in the dark, and yet unafraid. Because sometimes survival wasn't just about hiding. Sometimes it was about standing in the storm and daring the world to see you, and daring the world to bow. And Elena Marrow had just begun. The grand hall of Vale Manor glittered with candlelight, casting long, dancing shadows across the polished marble floors. Noblemen and women in lavish gowns and tailored suits whispered among themselves, their eyes darting toward the entrance. Word had spread like wildfire. The vampire king had summoned a human girl, Elena Marrow, into the heart of his domain. Elena felt every stare as she stepped inside, her hand instinctively resting over the swell of her belly. Her heart hammered, not from fear of the king this time, but from the cold, piercing curiosity of the courtiers. She had been invisible all her life, a shadow in the background, yet tonight every gaze clung to her, dissecting her posture, her expression, her very presence. Lucien stood at the far end of the hall, tall and immovable. His crimson eyes scanned the crowd, then flicked to her. The slight tilt of his head was enough to make the room fall silent. Every noble knew better than to challenge his attention. Tonight, Elena realized she wasn't merely surviving, she was being measured. A murmured insult floated from a distant corner. "Does the king entertain servants now?" Elena felt the sting, but she swallowed it. She had learned the hard way that anger could be dangerous when survival demanded composure. Instead, she lifted her chin, meeting the gaze of her accuser with quiet dignity. Lucien's hand moved subtly. A gesture almost invisible, yet enough to silence the whispers. Elena felt it as a shield, unseen yet unyielding. She had never been defended like this. And the realization sparked something fierce within her. Respect could be stronger than fear. "Your Majesty," came the voice of Lady Valeria, the most influential noble in the southern covens. Her tone was sharp, ice-lacing every word. "I fail to see why this girl is granted an audience in our court. She is beneath notice." Lucien's crimson gaze swept over Valeria like a predator. "Elena is carrying what belongs to the Vale bloodline. That is reason enough." His voice was calm, almost lethally measured, but the hall grew tense. "She has already proven herself where 12 of my finest could not. Do not test my patience by underestimating her." Valeria's lips pressed into a thin line, and she stepped back, though her eyes still burned with disdain. Elena's stomach fluttered at Lucien's words. Carrying the child of the vampire king. She had tried to hide it, had tried to bury it beneath fear and secrecy. And yet now, in the heart of the court, her existence could not be ignored. As the evening progressed, Elena was escorted through the hall by Lucien himself. Their proximity made her pulse race in ways she had never expected. He spoke little, but each word was deliberate, each movement calculated. "You must understand," Lucien said quietly as they walked past towering tapestries depicting generations of Vales, "the court will test you. Some will be cruel. Others will seek to manipulate your kindness. You cannot falter. Not now. Not ever." I will do my best," Elena replied softly. Lucien's gaze lingered on her longer than necessary, his eyes scanning her face, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the subtle tremble in her hands. "Kindness is a weapon you do not yet understand. It can disarm warriors, tame beasts, and even sway the will of kings." Elena swallowed, absorbing his words. She had always seen kindness as a quiet, almost invisible act. But in the presence of this immortal, it had become her shield, her secret strength. As the night deepened, the court's intrigue became apparent. Noblemen whispered of alliances, betrayals, and dark histories. Elena realized quickly that surviving Lucien's protection was only the beginning. The court had its own power, and it would test her every step. And yet, in the quiet moments when Lucien's gaze met hers across the hall, she felt a connection deeper than fear or duty. There was a subtle understanding, a slow recognition of shared strength and vulnerability. He saw her not as a servant, not as a pawn, but as a human being capable of courage, compassion, and resolve. Later, in the solitude of the royal gardens, Lucien approached Elena. Moonlight draped over him like silk, highlighting the sharp angles of his face. Obsidian grazed nearby, calm and watchful. "You have endured much tonight," Lucien said softly, voice low enough that only she could hear. "And yet, you stand taller than any noble here." Elena's cheeks warmed. I only tried to stay alive," she murmured. "Survival," Lucien said, "is rarely about hiding. It is about asserting your presence no matter how small. You have done that, Elena. And that is why I cannot let harm touch you or your child." A silence fell between them, heavy and charged. Elena felt it, the slow, building tension, the magnetic pull of two worlds colliding. Mortal fragility and immortal power. The court would challenge her. The king would protect her. And between the two, something undeniable was beginning to bloom. For the first time, Elena Marrow understood that she was no longer merely a pawn in the shadows. She was a force in her own right, a future mother, a survivor, and perhaps, the only woman capable of taming the vampire king. And as the night air kissed her face, mingling with the scent of roses and rain, Elena realized one truth: courage and kindness could change destinies. Even in a world ruled by vampires. The sun had long disappeared behind the jagged peaks surrounding Vale Manor, leaving the sky a bruised canvas of midnight and violet. Inside, the castle was alive with murmurs, courtiers whispering rumors of the human girl who had tamed the unbreakable stallion, Elena Marrow. Some spoke with envy, others with suspicion. But all eyes eventually returned to King Lucien Vale, whose attention never wavered from her. Elena sat in the quiet of her chambers, hands resting protectively over her belly. The events of the night had left her exhausted, yet an unfamiliar energy pulsed through her. She couldn't explain it, but the moment Obsidian had bowed, something had awakened inside her. Something ancient and powerful, yet intertwined with her human fragility. She wasn't alone for long. A soft knock echoed through the chamber. "Elena," Lucien's voice called, low and measured. She hesitated, then nodded. "Enter," she said, though her heart raced. He stepped into the room, tall and composed, his eyes glowing faintly in the candlelight. There was no guard's intimidation here, only quiet intensity. "You felt it last night, didn't you?" Lucien asked, his voice almost a whisper, yet heavy with certainty. Elena swallowed hard. I think so," she admitted. "I felt something. When the horse stopped. When he bowed." Lucien approached, circling her with the grace of a predator. "That is not merely instinct or luck. That is power. Magic. A connection older than any living vampire, yet rare in humans. And it is tied to your child." Her breath caught. "My child?" "Yes," he said simply. "The blood within you is not ordinary. It carries the potential of something far greater than you understand. That is why Obsidian obeyed. That is why I could not fail to notice you." Elena's mind spun. All her life she had tried to hide, to be small, to survive unnoticed. And yet now her body, her very being, was a beacon of a power she barely understood. Fear and exhilaration coiled together inside her. Lucien leaned closer, his gaze piercing through her hesitation. "I will teach you to harness it," he said. "To protect yourself and your child. To control what you cannot yet name. But you must trust me completely." I don't know if I can," Elena whispered, trembling. "I've never done anything like this before. I'm just a maid." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You are far more than a maid, Elena. You are the mother of my heir. And now, by fate or choice, you are my pupil. Do you understand the gravity of that?" Elena nodded, a mix of fear and determination settling over her. I want to learn," she said softly. Lucien extended a hand. "Then place your trust in me. And in yourself." When Elena's fingers touched his, a spark of energy pulsed through her, startling in its intensity. It wasn't pain, it was recognition, a sense that something long dormant had been awakened. The room seemed to vibrate with power, a hum beneath the air, a presence that neither fully understood. "Close your eyes," Lucien instructed. "Focus on the life within you. Listen to it. Let it speak to you." Elena did as he said, hands over her stomach, breathing deep. At first she felt only warmth and the steady heartbeat of her child. Then, slowly visions began to bloom, glimpses of past generations of vampire royalty, of beasts tamed with a mere gesture, of bloodlines intertwined with humans, of power flowing in waves she could almost touch. She gasped, opening her eyes. Lucien's gaze was fixed on her, observing, guiding, protecting. "You are connected to more than yourself now," he said. "Your kindness, your bravery, your resilience, they are conduits for this power. It responds to emotion, to courage, to purity of heart. And in the right hands, it can change everything." Elena's lips parted, awe and fear mingling. I don't know if I can control it." "You already do," Lucien replied, stepping closer. "You tamed obsidian with nothing but your hand and your heart. That was the first step. The next will be more challenging. And dangerous." Outside, the storm that had been building for weeks began to stir again, whispering through the manor windows like a prelude to chaos. Elena realized that her life, her child, and even the vampire king himself were about to be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, she felt a flicker of something else: purpose. Power intertwined with responsibility. Courage threaded with love. She was no longer merely surviving. She was preparing to claim her place in a world that had never seen someone like her, and would never forget her again. Lucien extended a hand once more, and Elena took it, letting the warmth of his presence guide her into the unknown. Together they would face the challenges ahead, of the court, of rivals, and of the very forces of fate itself. And for the first time in her life, Elena Marrow felt truly alive. The morning sun filtered weakly through the tall stained-glass windows of Vale Manor, painting the corridors with fractured colors. Rumors had spread overnight like wildfire. Elena Marrow, the human maid who had tamed obsidian and carried the vampire king's heir, would now be present at the day's court assembly. Nobles whispered behind gilded fans, their voices thick with envy, suspicion, and barely concealed fear. Elena's hands rested over her belly as she entered the throne room. Each step echoed in the vast chamber, and with every echo she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down upon her. The courtiers' whispers were sharp daggers, each syllable meant to wound, to belittle, to undermine her. "Is this truly the girl the king trusts?" muttered a duchess from the East Wing, her jeweled fingers tapping against her chin in disdain. "She is no ordinary girl," Lucien's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. All conversation ceased immediately. The courtiers bowed their heads instinctively. Lucien sat upon the obsidian throne, crimson eyes glinting with both command and curiosity. Elena felt his gaze like fire tracing her skin. Her pulse quickened, not from fear of him this time, but from the undeniable pull between them that had grown over the past days. She had survived his scrutiny, his tests, and even his teaching sessions where she had learned to focus her latent power. And yet, she knew tonight's assembly would be different. Tonight, she would be measured against the sharpest minds and deepest ambitions in vampire society. "Introduce her," Lucien commanded softly to the room. A hush fell over the nobles. Elena stepped forward, head held high, trying to embody the courage Lucien had praised. And then, unexpectedly, a rival noble, Lord Varen, a man with ambitions as dark as the northern forests, stepped forward. "This girl," he sneered, "is no more than a servant playing at power. How long, I wonder, before the king realizes the danger of placing his trust in a mortal womb?" Elena felt her stomach tighten. The room seemed to close in around her. She had faced cruelty all her life, but this public mockery of her child and her courage, was sharper than any blade. Lucien's crimson gaze fixed on Varen. The room went cold. "You underestimate her," Lucien said, voice steady, ice lacing every syllable. "You assume she is weak because she is human. Yet she has tamed beasts, outwitted my guards, and carried my heir without faltering. You would do well to remember that power is not always measured in fangs or fire." The nobles murmured uneasily. Varen's face darkened, but before he could respond, Elena felt something stir inside her. A surge of warmth, a pulse that radiated outward from her heart and through her child. Her fingers tingled. Her breath caught. She closed her eyes, focusing. The room grew silent, and for a fleeting moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. The courtiers felt it too, a subtle shift in the air, an unspoken command that resonated in their very bones. Obsidian, standing in the courtyard, whinnied softly as though acknowledging a new order. Elena opened her eyes. They glowed faintly, a soft, ethereal light that mirrored the pulse of life within her. The whispers stopped. The courtiers gasped. Even Lucien's expression softened, a flicker of awe crossing his otherwise unreadable face. I will not be underestimated," Elena said, voice steady now, filled with conviction. I am not here to compete with your titles or your claims. I am here to protect my child, and I will do so with everything I am." The room fell silent. Not even a servant dared breathe. Lord Varen's sneer faltered as he realized he had misjudged her. Lucien rose from his throne and descended the steps, stopping just behind Elena. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, a gesture of protection, of recognition, and something deeper that made her heart flutter uncontrollably. "You have done well," he said quietly, audible only to her. "This is the first of many tests. Remember, your strength lies not only in power but in courage, compassion, and wisdom. And in trust." The courtiers, though uneasy, began to murmur again, this time with a mix of respect and caution. Elena realized that she had not only survived the assembly, but she had altered the balance of the court. Later, in the privacy of the royal gardens, Lucien and Elena walked side by side. The moon had risen high, silver light cascading across the marble fountains and manicured hedges. "You impressed them today," Lucien said, voice low, intimate. "And yet, it was not your power alone. It was your heart, your bravery, your ability to remain calm under pressure. That is rarer than any vampire gift." Elena felt a warmth flood her cheeks. "I only did what I had to. For my child." Lucien's gaze lingered on her longer than necessary. The air between them thrummed with unspoken tension, a slow-burning fire neither dared name aloud. "You are far stronger than you know," he murmured, stepping closer. "And far braver than most mortals. Soon, you may even teach me something I've forgotten, what it means to care without fear." Her breath caught. The distance between them shrank, yet remained deliberate. She felt the weight of his power, his centuries of experience, and his unspoken desire. And she understood, with a clarity that both thrilled and terrified her, that the bond between them was no longer merely about protection. It was growing into something far more complex, intimate, and dangerous. The night deepened. Obsidian grazed nearby, still and watchful, as if sensing the unspoken heartbeat between his master and the woman who had tamed him. Elena's hand rested on her belly, drawing courage and purpose from the life within. Tonight, she had faced not only the court, but the first undeniable test of her own power, and of the delicate, slow-burning connection between her and the Vampire King. The storms were far from over, both outside and within Vale Manor. But Elena Marrow had survived, and she had begun to thrive. And for the first time she allowed herself to imagine a future where courage, love, and magic could coexist in a world ruled by shadows. The first light of dawn struggled through the heavy drapes of Vale Manor, casting the grand hall in pale gold. Elena Marrow stood at the top of the wide marble staircase, her hands resting over the gentle swell of her belly. The court had gathered once more, summoned by King Lucien Vale himself. Whispers rippled through the room, thick with tension, fear, and curiosity. Everyone knew, tonight would decide the girl's fate, and perhaps the future of the Vale bloodline itself. Lucien emerged from the shadows of the throne room, regal and imposing, crimson eyes glinting with a mixture of authority and emotion that only Elena was allowed to see. He approached her silently, and as he reached her side, he placed a hand over hers, warm and grounding. "Tonight," he said, voice deep, commanding, "you will face them all. The courtiers, the nobles, the skeptics, and you will show them what it means to carry the blood of the Vale, and the courage of your own heart." Elena drew a deep breath. She had faced fear, mockery, and the deadly judgment of the court before, but this was different. Tonight, her power, her true untapped magic, would be tested in the light of history. As the court settled, Lucien gave a subtle signal. Elena lifted her hands, drawing the energy she had felt awaken within her. It started as a faint glow around her fingertips, then spread like a ripple through the air, pulsing with warmth and light. The courtiers gasped. Candles flickered violently as if sensing the surge of power. "Witness, all of you," Elena's voice rang clear, steady and melodic, "that the powerless are never to be underestimated." She extended her hands toward the center of the hall. The air shimmered, and Obsidian, standing silently in the courtyard, whinnied as though responding to an unseen command. The horse's massive form moved gracefully, bowing low in unison with Elena's gestures. The courtiers' mouths fell open in astonishment. Lucien's gaze softened as he watched her, pride mingling with awe. "You've come far, Elena," he murmured, almost to himself. "Farther than even I expected." Elena's eyes met his. She felt it, the slow, undeniable pull between them, a connection forged through shared trials, protection, and quiet understanding. Her power was no longer hidden. It had become a testament to her bravery, resilience, and the life she carried. Lord Varen stepped forward, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. This is sorcery, he spat, though his voice lacked conviction. The court murmured nervously, unsure whether to challenge or flee. Lucien's crimson eyes narrowed. No. This is the strength of a human heart. Courage, compassion, and truth made visible. And it is stronger than any fear or envy you may carry. Elena felt the warmth of her child stir within her as if affirming Lucien's words. She took a small, steady step forward, and the light around her seemed to pulse in tandem with her heartbeat. One by one, the courtiers bowed their heads in respect, the room settling into silence filled with awe and reverence. Lucien extended his hand toward Elena. You have proven yourself beyond doubt, he said. Not by birthright, not by blood alone, but by courage, compassion, and unwavering strength. You are my queen in every sense that matters. Elena's breath caught. She had never imagined such words, such recognition, or such belonging. And yet, in that moment, surrounded by shadows and whispers of power, she felt the warmth of destiny settle over her like a protective cloak. Lucien, she whispered, voice trembling with emotion, I never thought. He stepped closer, closing the distance. You have taught me more in these days than centuries could have, he said softly. About mercy, about courage, about the beauty of life even in the darkest corners of the world. You are more than human. You are the future. A hush fell over the hall as he lowered his head, brushing his lips against her forehead, not in domination but in reverent affection. Elena's heart raced, a mix of fear, joy, and an unspoken promise that nothing would harm her or her child under his protection. Outside, the sun's first true rays broke through the clouds, illuminating Vale Manor. The shadows of doubt, cruelty, and fear that had haunted Elena's life began to fade. The court had witnessed not just magic, but the undeniable power of humanity, kindness, and courage, the things that even centuries of vampire rule could not replicate. Lucien's hand found hers, fingers entwining gently yet possessively. Together, he said, voice low and full of certainty, we will face whatever comes. Court intrigue, enemies, darkness, none of it will touch what we have. Elena drew a deep breath, feeling the steady heartbeat of her child and the quiet strength of the man beside her. She had faced fear, danger, and judgment, and survived. She had tamed beasts, stood before kings, and discovered powers she had never imagined. And now, for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that love, courage, and destiny could coexist, even in a world ruled by shadows. As the courtiers looked on, some in awe, others in fear, one undeniable truth settled over the hall. The human girl who had entered Vale Manor as a maid had emerged as its heart, its future, and the vampire king's equal in courage, strength, and love. And with that, Elena Marrow knew, her life, her child, and her love with Lucien were no longer merely surviving, they were unstoppable.